Hello YouTube, it's Wasim and welcome to my very first Roblox scripting tutorial. And this will be a series, and in this series I am hoping to take you from the very basics of Roblox Lua scripting to very advanced concepts. And eventually I'd like to have a series on how to build a complete game, but first comes the scripting. So let's dive right into it. So hopefully you're already familiar with the basic Roblox Studio windows, such as the Explorer and Properties windows. If you're not, there's plenty of resources online to get yourself acquainted with these windows. But one window that might be new to you is the output window. And the output window is very useful for us as scripters because that's how we're able to print out certain values in our programs. So that might be useful because, for example, when we're scripting, we encounter an error. We'd like to know where the error is occurring. And one way to figure that out is to output the values along the way in the output window so that we can track down where the error is occurring, where in our chain is the code breaking, so to speak. And this will make more sense as we get deeper into this tutorial series. But to open up the output window, simply go to your View tab, and it's the second button right here. Likewise. So without further ado, let's get into the scripting. So the very first thing we need to do is to create a script. Now we can create a script in many places, but I will create it under Workspace. And to add a script is just like adding any other instance in Roblox. Simply click Add, press Script, and as you can see, a new tab is created. We still have our base plate tab. We can access our scene view here, and we can access our script tab. And you can see it is named script, and that's because our instance is named script. We can rename it to anything else. I'll just call it tutorial 1. And you can see the tab changes to reflect the name change. So the very first thing you will notice is by default there is this line of text in our script, and I would actually like to run the game. So to run, just press this button and press the run button. If we press run, we see that this hello world is outputted to our output window. If we click here, we can see it brings us to the line that generated the output. Now you don't have to worry exactly about what this print means, but just know that we use it to output values, and in this case we outputted hello world. So just press stop to stop running the game, and we're back. So I want to talk about this concept of values because it's a very important concept within programming. So you've already encountered one type already, and specifically it's this text in between these double quotes, hello world. That is one type of value. You might have heard the phrase that computers run or understand ones and zeros, right? They understand ones and zeros. Ultimately, everything is just ones and zeros. So that is true, but how those ones and zeros are interpreted are determined by the type, right? So the computer can choose to understand those ones and zeros as a number, or it can choose to understand those ones and zeros as a series of characters or text. Or it can choose to understand those ones and zeros as true or false values, on and off. So the value type determines how those ones and zeros are interpreted, and it also determines what sort of operations we can do on those values, and more on the operations side of things later. So this print that you see here, we are using print to print out values to the output. And in this case, we're printing out hello world. And what is the type of this value? Well, I will tell you that the type of this value is a string. A string is just a series of characters or simply text. And how do we know, how does the computer know that this is a string? Well, it knows because we put the series of characters in between double quotations. So anything that goes in between double quotations is a string. Now, there's other types of values. For example, there are number values. If I type any series of numerical characters, the computer understands that to be a number value type, right? So I can also print that. I could run this. If I run it, you can see it prints it to the output as well. Now you might wonder, okay, I mean, there's other types as well. You can print out true and false values. These are what we call Boolean types, true and false. Just like 1, 2, 3 are all number types, and anything in between double quotes is a string type. The true or false are what you call Boolean types, and those can be printed as well. Now let's rerun, and as you can see, if you change a script while the game is running, once you stop playing, it will reset it unless you say otherwise. But let's print true, and then you can see simply prints true. Okay, that's cool. We have seen a few different value types, but what exactly do they do? What is the purpose of each? This is where I would like to introduce the concept of expressions. Expressions sound fancy, but all it is a series of symbols that produce a value or represent a value. For example, if you just have the number 3, the number 3 in of itself is an expression. It's a very basic expression, but it's an expression nonetheless, because it expresses or evaluates to a value, which is the number 3 in of itself. But with numbers, you can have various sorts of what are called numerical expressions. So for example, I can do an operation between numbers. I could do 3 plus 5. This plus is called an operator. And what is the operation is doing? It's adding two numerical values together to produce a new value. So since this entire thing evaluates to a value or results in a new value, this is an expression. 3 plus 5 evaluates to 8. So this is an expression. And when we run it, we will see that the computer will do that computation, and then it will print out 8. And we can add more numbers as well. And what the computer does in this case is that it computes these values in pairs. So the computer will first do 3 plus 5, which will result in 8, and then it'll add 8 plus 23, which will result in 31. So the computer does this in steps. As it sees these plus signs, it evaluates these numerical expressions in pairs. So this 3 plus 5 in of itself is an expression, but it gets combined into a bigger expression when you add 23. So if you run this, we see 31, right? So remember, an expression is any series of symbols that evaluates to a value. And an expression usually involves a combination of literal values or constants like 3, 5, 23, and operators like plus, and we can do other mathematical operators like minus and whatnot. So I could even do multiplication. So I could do 3 times 5, which is 15, and then plus 23, which will result in 38. So if I run that, you see 38. So this is an expression, right? Because it evaluates to 15 a value. And this is also an expression because it evaluates to 38. And likewise, we can do certain operations on string values or a series of text. So I could do something like, hi, my name is plus Wasim. So what will happen is that the computer will combine both of these strings, both of these pieces of text into one giant text. And notice there's also a space right before the closing quotation of the first string. And that's significant because otherwise there would be no space when it joins the two together. Oh, attempt to perform. Okay. Oh, look, we got an error. So this is good. So what does this mean? So the error, this is our first error. So it says attempt to perform arithmetic add on string. So it's saying that, basically saying that we cannot do an add operation, plus operation between strings. So this is right. We cannot do that. What we can do instead is we do what's called a concatenation operation, which will put two strings together. So if you run that, we see, hi, my name is Wasim. And you can see there's a space between is and Wasim. And that's important because if we didn't have a space here and we run this, oops, I accidentally clicked the other play button. But you can see that it doesn't put a space in between when it combines the two, right? So we have to have a space in one or the other if we want, if we want to look right. We can also put a space in the other one. Doesn't matter. Be the same result, as you can see. And just like numerical expressions, we can infinitely chain these operations. So yeah, we can chain these operations and it will combine all these strings together. And remember, it will do this from left to right. So it'll combine these strings first, which will result in one bigger string, and then it'll combine the next two, which will result in a bigger string, and then it'll combine the last, which will result in an even bigger string, and then it'll print all that together. I won't run this. You can run it for yourself and confirm that this is true. I will say that for strings, you can also put strings between single quotes as well, right? So before you saw me using double quotes, but you can also use single quotes as well. There are times where you would want to use one or the other. Generally, I prefer using double quotes, and there's a reason for that, but you can search around for yourself, but I don't want to get into the details in this tutorial. But just as we've seen, numerical, sometimes they call them arithmetic expressions. So maybe arithmetic expression is the more popular term to use. So we've seen arithmetic expressions, we've seen string expressions. There's also what are called Boolean expressions or conditional expressions. And these expressions are ones that evaluate to a true or false values. So numerical expression evaluate to a number, string expressions evaluate to a string, and Boolean expressions evaluate to a true or false value, a Boolean value, so to speak. So for example, one Boolean true. Remember, true is a Boolean expression in of itself. It's a very basic Boolean expression, but it's an expression in of itself, expresses the value true. Same thing for false. But there are also operations that we can do that produce Boolean values, that produce true or false values. For example, there is the double equals operator. And what does this do? The double equals operator compares two values and tries to see if they are the same, right? So basically I'm trying to say, is number 3 the same as the number 5, right? Are these, do the expressions on either side of this double equal evaluate to the same value? Does 3 evaluate to 5? And if I run that, you can see it says false, because obviously 3 does not evaluate to 5. 3 evaluates to 3 and 5 evaluates to 5. Now we can make this a little bit more interesting, and we can say, does 3 plus 5 evaluate to 8? Does the expression 3 plus 5 evaluate to the same value as the expression 8, right? And as you know, the way these expressions work is that it starts with from the very left going to the right. So we'll first do 3 plus 5, and then that's going to be result in 8, and then it's going to also evaluate the right side, but that just evaluates to 8 as well, and then it's going to compare the two. So let's see what it says. And it says true, 3 plus 5 is equal to 8. And the double equals operator is also supported for string values. So we can compare two pieces of text to see if they're exactly the same. You can see it says true. And right, and I think I will stop here for this tutorial. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, please drop a comment, share this video out to anyone who you think might be interested. The goal is to learn. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comment section, and I am more than glad to answer them. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.